It's being called a war like no other. Military analysts are still struggling to find the right words for it, not because the strikes are surprising, not because the targets are unexpected, but because of how it's being done with a precision, a speed, and a simultaneity that every established doctrine of modern warfare said was simply not achievable. There's a line, there's a threshold that separates the world of conventional military power from something else entirely, something that until very recently existed only in classified Pentagon war games and the imagination of defense theorists. We are now watching in real time a military force that has crossed that threshold. And the gap between what it can do and what every other military on Earth can do is not a gap in resources or resolve. It's a gap in the very architecture of war itself. We are now officially 3 weeks into Operation Epic Fury, day 21, and U.S.-Israeli forces show no signs of letting up in the least. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As Iranian capabilities continue to be absolutely decimated, the tempo of strikes has actually accelerated in the past 72 hours. Iranian retaliatory drones and ballistic missiles launched in increasingly desperate waves are being intercepted at rates above 90% by combined U.S. and Israeli air defense networks, while Iran's own ability to regenerate those forces has collapsed in real time. Despite the Strait of Hormuz still under threat, oil prices remain relatively stable, around $100 per barrel, nothing even remotely comparable to the doom and gloom forecasters who were predicting $160, $280 barrels and the like. In fact, WTI, West Texas Intermediate, they've been consistently priced in the low $90 range. Make no mistake, the United States is fast becoming the dominant energy producer on the planet, and WTI is the tip of that sword. But that said, on the battlefield itself, I mean, simply put, Iran is running out of things to shoot back with. The IRGC's command structure has been beheaded, its Navy reduced to a coastal patrol force at that. Its air defense is a patchwork of isolated, uncoordinated batteries with no unified command to tie them together. Allies in the Gulf, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, have now had their own energy infrastructure struck several times by Iranian retaliatory missiles, hardening regional support for the American operation rather than fracturing it, which is what Tehran tried to do, tried to sever that growing alliance. Iran's one remaining leverage point is the threat to its own energy sector, but even that card is being systematically removed, as we're about to see. Now, one of the key dynamics that's emerging from this war is something that geopolitical theorists are only just beginning to grapple with. We're on the front lines of this, right? We're on the cutting edge of societal evolution, as the great Rush Limbaugh used to say. But a lot of geopolitical theorists have yet to catch up with this. I have said this repeatedly over the last 3 weeks. This war is revealing much more than just military prowess. This war is revealing the emergence of an entirely new world order. Or better, it's not even a world order. That's thinking too small. It's an orbital order. It's a cosmic order, as I'm going to show you. It's an order that in many ways, many of us had no idea existed. And one of the key dynamics of that order is a phenomenon known as technopolarity. Now, you often hear the term multipolar. We talk about this all the time on this channel. Multipolarity, right? We're living in a multipolar world, a world with not just one great power, the United States, a unipolar world, but a world of multiple competing great powers, China, Russia, India, increasingly Turkey, and the like. But there's another layer of order in that multipolarity, and that's what scholars call technopolarity, where civilizational power is increasingly defined not by landmass, not by the size of your army, not by how deep you can dig your bunkers, but by your mastery of the technological stratum, the invisible layer of stealth, precision, cyber, orbital, and AI-enabled systems that sits above the traditional battlefield. And whoever controls that high ground, that stratum, controls the world. That is precisely what we're seeing on display in the Iran war. I actually think it's the most important lens through which to understand not just Operation Epic Fury, but the entire emerging world order that's rising right before our very eyes, this concept of technopolarity. So if you get that one thing through this video, I think you've basically got the summation of the video. Again, not unipolarity, not multipolarity, technopolarity. The idea is this. In the old international order framework, global power was measured in land, population, nukes, and GDP, right? States competed on roughly comparable technological platforms. So you had the Soviet tank versus the American tank. You had the Russian MiGs versus the American F-15s. The gap was real, but it was bridgeable. What Operation Epic Fury has revealed in real time, in the most visceral possible way, is that we've now entered a categorically different era. One in which the decisive variable of power is no longer how much military hardware a state possesses, but instead what technological generation it operates in. So Iran had Russian-supplied S-300 air defense batteries. It had domestically produced ballistic missiles. It had a navy. It had hardened underground bunkers. By any 20th century metric, it was a serious regional military power, no question. And in the course of just 3 weeks, literally 21 days, U.S. and Israeli forces operating simultaneously across kinetic, electronic, cyber, and space domains rendered every single one of those assets functionally irrelevant. That's not a victory of quantity over quantity, of American tanks over Iranian tanks, as it were. That's a victory of generation over generation. Fifth dimensional warfare, defeating a third dimensional military. That's what you got to get in this whole rising technopolar world. Fifth dimensional warfare is defeating a third dimensional military. So if you don't know, third dimensional warfare is what most militaries on Earth still practice. It operates across the three classical domains, land, sea, and air. So you build tanks, ships, fighter jets, you harden your bunkers, you train your soldiers, you buy missiles. Iran did all of that. Check, 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 right? And it did it seriously over decades with Russian and Chinese help. That's third dimensional warfare, land, sea, and air. Fifth dimensional warfare adds two more domains on top of those three. It adds cyberspace and orbital space, space itself. But more importantly, it doesn't just add those domains, it fuses them. Real-time satellite feeds directly into targeting algorithms. Cyber operators blind enemy radar before a single aircraft crosses the border. Space Command denies the enemy GPS while preserving yours. Electronic warfare aircraft cut the nervous system of an integrated air defense network while stealth bombers fly through it completely undetected. Every domain talks to every other domain simultaneously in milliseconds through AI, compressing what used to take days of planning into a kill chain measured in literally seconds.